Copper Sun by Sharon Draper, Chapter 41, Fort Mose. What do we do now? Tidbit asked as they peeked at the fort in the distance. Amari could barely contain her eagerness. We go in, she said joyfully. Tidbit jumped from one foot to the other, and Polly kept covering her mouth to hold back a case of nervous giggles. Then, as if they did this every day, they boldly headed down the road toward the tiny fort. The horse ambled behind them. Amari grabbed Tidbit by the hand, then reached out to Polly with her other hand. Polly gripped it firmly. The two girls looked at each other and understood all that was not said. As they began to walk, first slowly, then faster, almost trotting in anticipation, they walked down the hill, past the first few houses clustered near the road, and directly to the gate of the fort, about a half-mile ahead. One house in particular, a small rounded hut made of rough logs and covered with thatch, stood very close to the road. Where are you all going? A woman's voice called out. Amari tensed, then stopped. The woman, dressed in a simple green calico dress and a bonnet to match, was standing in front of the house and waving to them. Her skin was dusty brown, the color of earth, Amari thought. A fire burned in front of her house, and the smell of cooked rabbit filled the air. We be heading to the fort, Amari replied cautiously. She held Tidbit's hand tightly, but she released Polly's. Polly stepped back a little. Y'all be hungry? The woman asked. Oh, yes'm, Amari replied. Tidbit crept closer to the woman's woodsy fire. We be real hungry, ma'am. They all laughed at that, and the woman motioned them to sit down. Polly tied the horse to a tree. How far y'all come? The woman asked. She spooned 3 bowls of steaming food for them, corn pudding and roasted rabbit, acting as if greeting strangers was what she did every morning. Perhaps it was, Amari thought. The woman even tossed a bone to Hush Puppy. We come from Charlestown, South Carolina colony, Amari admitted quietly. The woman whistled through her teeth. That be a far piece, she said. You walk all this way, or you come by boat? No boat, Amari replied, thinking how much quicker and easier their journey might have been if they had had a boat. We walk. Hard journey, the woman asked, glancing at their battered feet. Yes, very hard, Polly replied. Always is, the woman said with resignation. This be Fort Mose? Amari asked, wanting to be absolutely sure they were in the right place. Sure is, child. Gracia Real de Santa Teresa de Mose. I done dream of this place, Amari said softly, for a very long time. Dreams disappear when you wake up. Ever notice that, child? The woman asked as she gave Tidbit more food. Amari looked up in alarm. Why you say that? Relax, child. You safe. The woman spooned a plate of food for herself. My name is Inez. I was a slave in Georgia. Me and my man Jasper run away last year and come to this place. We figure we done made it to heaven. Then the Spanish soldiers took him away. Why? Amari asked with concern. It'd be like this, Inez said. The English soldiers control the colonies. The Spanish ain't no saints who think everybody ought to be free. They free the slaves because it makes the English soldiers angry, because England be losing lots of money when they lose slaves. I don't understand, Polly said, looking confused. Inez continued. See, the Spanish owns this Florida territory, and it be needing protection from the English, who they is always fighting with. So they sometimes make the runaways serve in their army before they be truly free. That's where my Jasper is, down in Cuba someplace, serving in the Spanish army. But that's not fair, Polly exclaimed. Everything that done happened to you been fair? Inez asked her. No, ma'am, Polly said quietly. Amari thought about this, then asked, You free, Inez? Inez smiled. Yes, child, I got my papers that says I be free. I be free to work hard, free to be hungry, free to miss my man. But yes, child, I be free. Now tell me who you are and who this little one be, she asked, nodding her head toward Tidbit. My name be Amari, and this be Tidbit. He my son now, Amari said out loud for the first time. My real name Timothy, Tidbit said quietly. Amari looked at him in surprise. Mama named me Timothy, the boy said, but I was real little when I was born, so everybody called me Tidbit. But Mama always told me when I get to be a man, my name be Timothy. Amari smiled with pride at the child who would one day be the man named Timothy. Well, Mr. Timothy, let me be the first to call you by your free name, Inez said, lightly pinching the boy on his chin. To Polly, she said, so what be your story, child? Polly shifted her weight, and finished what she was chewing. I'm Polly. I was an indentured girl. I ran off with Amari and Tidbit because she paused. It was very bad when we left. She bowed her head as if the memory was too much to recite. Troubles never be over, child, Inez said gently, but it'd be good to share them with friends. Polly looked up. We could not have made it without each other, she acknowledged, smiling at Amari. Amari returned the smile as she finished eating. Food be good thing too, Tidbit said, interrupting. More, please. As Inez was refilling Tidbit's boil, Amari asked, who live here in this place? Only about 100 folk, mostly runaway slaves who now be free. Some Indians, some whites, mostly Spanish soldiers. 2 priests, everybody gets along because nobody got much. Everybody know everybody else. Sometimes blacks marry up with Indians, sometimes with whites. It sure ain't like nothing else, I reckon. Kate'll be right, a little bit, Mari murmured to Polly. A few months back, Inez told him, we had about 20 escaped slaves come here from Georgia County. Their master traced them here. Amari looked up in alarm and thought of Clay. They had to go back, she asked. She wondered if Clay would ever trace them here. Inez laughed. No, child, them folks just stood there and laughed at him, right in his face. He had no power here, so he had to leave. So we're safe now, Polly asked. Even if someone from Carolina Colony should find his way here, he could not make us go back? Amari knew that Polly was worried about Clay as well. About as safe as you're gonna be, Inez replied. You say your name be Polly, she asked as she looked at Polly closely. Yes, ma'am, Polly replied. A young feller came through here just a few days ago, looking for somebody name of Polly, a red-headed white boy. Could he be the one you worrying about, stealing you back to Carolina? Polly covered her mouth in surprise. Is he still here? I think's not. He might be down in St. Augustine, but I don't know for sure. He might have said something about coming back this way. I don't rightly remember. He be a friend of yours or a foe? A friend, I think, Polly replied. Her sunburned skin turned a little redder. Amari turned to Polly and grinned at her. So what we do next, Amari asked Inez. Y'all need to meet Captain Menendez, Inez suggested. He be the one who welcome you all officially, find you a place to stay, and get you registered down in St. Augustine. What does that mean, Polly asked. Well, you got to meet with the priests. Everybody here be Catholic, you know, and you got to promise to serve the Spanish king. Personally, I don't see much difference between a Spanish king and an English one. Both of them rich. Neither of them ever shows up here, she chuckled. But that be what they makes you do when they takes you down to St. Augustine. Everybody got paperwork, child, but the difference here is it make you free. Amari grinned at that, excited to start the process. Free, she whispered. At that moment, Amari looked up as a tall, dark soldier with black and gray curly hair, deep-set dark eyes, and a spotless uniform walked purposely from the fort toward them. He reminds me of father, Amari thought with a pang. The man nodded to Inez, looked over the tired and bedraggled new arrivals, and said in an officious tone, Welcome to Fort Mose. I am Francisco Menendez, captain of this fort and responsible for all who live here. Amari wasn't sure what to do, so she stood up and bowed. Polly did the same and said, Thank you, sir. Tidbit, copying the 2 girls, bowed as well, but he leaned too far and fell over in a heap. The captain chuckled, picked up Tidbit, then sat him down carefully. Feel free to sit, my children, he said to Amari and Polly with a pleasant smile. Please introduce yourselves. Amari made the introductions, telling them briefly of their adventures on the journey and their desire to stay there as a place of refuge. She was amazed at how easily she was able to convey her thoughts in English. You have just learned English since you have been in this country? He asked. Embarrassed, Amari was afraid she had said something incorrectly. Yes, sir, she replied quietly. Then I must compliment you on a remarkable job to learn so much so quickly. Are you ready to learn Spanish now as well? Relieved, Amari grinned at him and nodded. Life here is not easy, the captain warned. Oh, no, sir, Amari said quickly. We know how to work hard. Even Timothy, is willing to work. I am an escaped slave as well, the captain told him. I have been recaptured twice and taken back to slavery, but I escaped each time and finally made my way back here. This place is not heaven, but it is so much better than the hell of slavery. Yes, sir, Polly whispered. How many years left on your indenture? He asked Polly. 14 years, sir, Polly told him. That's madness, the captain replied. This Derby fellow must be out of his mind. Yes, sir, Polly said with sorrow. We saw him kill a slave and a newborn baby the night before we left. Well, you will be safe here as long as you have the protection of the Spanish, as we have the protection of the Spanish. What skills do the three of you have to offer? He asked. Amari thought for a moment. Before we leave, sir, I felt like I worth nothing. But I knows how to cook and hunt and find herbs. And my mother taught me how to make threads from cotton. My father be a skilled weaver in my village, and I watch him as much as he let me. If women be allowed to weave here, I got lots of abilities, she said proudly. Inez interrupted quietly. You got more than that, child. What do you mean? Amari asked. Now is not the time, and Inez answered cryptically later. The captain ignored Inez and said to Amari, women can do anything they have skills for in this place. Can you build a loom? Amari closed her eyes, thinking back to her father's sturdy brown hands and how deftly they had constructed his loom, how nimbly his fingers had danced as he wove, and how magically the designs seemed to appear on the fabric. She wished she had spent more time with her parents when she had had the chance. Yes, sir, I remembers how well my father made it. He nodded his head with satisfaction. Good. You can earn good money as a maker of cloth and clothes. Money? Amari asked with surprise. I'd be paid for my work? Of course, the captain replied. Only slaves work for no reward. Amari looked at Polly and beamed. To Polly, the captain asked, now, what can you offer? We all work together here. Polly, seemingly unsure of herself at first, glanced at Inez, who gave her a nod of encouragement. I can cook and clean, and, she added as an afterthought, I can read and write. Captain Menendez looked up with an instant interest. You are educated? Polly looked surprised at the captain's reaction. Yes, sir. My parents had their troubles, but they taught me to read and write and count. There is a profound need for education for the children here, the captain said, his brows furrowed as if he were in deep thought. Freedom means very little if there is no knowledge to go with it. I'd be glad to teach the children, sir, Polly offered. We'll start a school, the captain said with excitement. Do you think you can do that? He asked Polly. Of course, sir. Polly glanced at Amari and Tidbit, a broad smile on her face. Excellent, the captain said, clapping his hands together. We have much thirst for learning. I shall have Jesse, our carpenter, make plans to build a small school. Can you show me how to make Timothy on paper? Tidbit asked, obviously impressed with Polly's hidden talent. Yes, I can, Timothy, Polly replied, and much more. And you, little man, the captain said, turning to Tidbit, your job will be to learn to read and write, but I shall apprentice you to the carpenter so that you can learn to be a builder as well. Would that suit you? Yes, sir, the boy replied. I'd be liking that just fine. The captain turned to Inez. Give them the dwelling that had been occupied by Felix and his wife. They have moved down to St. Augustine. Inez nodded. The captain began to leave. Then he turned back to the new residents of his domain. Tomorrow we will begin the formalization process. But for now, rest, relax, meet the people here. Inez will take good care of you. You are indeed welcome. Even your dog, he added with a smile. He saluted and walked away. Amari was thrilled and her face showed it. It was the first time since she had been taken from her homeland that she had met a black man in a position of authority. Close your mouth, child, Inez said with a chuckle. Around here, it ain't unusual to see a black man in charge. He wears his uniform well and be using his power wisely. He been around for a long time. Even the Spanish soldiers don't be messing with Captain Menendez. I like his uniform, Tidbit said as the captain disappeared down the road. Can I be a soldier? Perhaps one day when you all growed up, Amari told him. I'd be fighting for my freedom, the boy said, pretending to hold a musket. All your life, little one, Amari told him. Take your time. I feel good about this place, Amari said with contentment. I'm so tired of traveling. I could sleep for a week. You do that, child, Inez told her. Y'all still got a heap of healing to do. You got family now. Folks will take care of you. Go on and rest if you have a mind to. Polly scooted close to the fire and held her hands out to its warmth. Amari knew that Polly had much to ponder as she gazed at the flames. She too had found a place of safety, at least for now. Inez stood up and said to Amari, "Walk with me, child. I want to show you where the captain done give you to stay. It'll be on the far side of the cornfields. Timothy, you stay here and take care of Polly, you hear? I'll be right back," Amari said. Amari called. Tidbit, who was busy chasing chickens in Inez's yard, waved goodbye. "Even the air here smells free," she said to Inez as they walked.